I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with us. It is Tuesday, and it is July the 2nd, which is actually, believe it or not, this is the day I believe John Adams actually thought this would be the national holiday, that July 2nd would be the day that America, for generations, would celebrate Independence Day. But, because, history doesn't always work out the way you think it's going to, we celebrated on July 4th, but it was July 2nd that they actually, there's all kinds of tales about flies or anyway, just we're going to get into that later in the show today. I'll tell you some of those theories. But the bottom line is John Adams did think that July 2nd would be the day. He wrote in his letters that he thought this would be the day that we celebrate our independence. And by the way, why do we celebrate our independence? I saw, excuse me, I'm still a little under the weather. I saw a Facebook post. It was a kind of it wasn't a meme, but it was done. You know how Facebook, you post in those big letters now with a colored background. You know what I mean? Joe, you know what I'm saying? It was one of those, and it was like, let us remember that we celebrate 4th of July. The 4th of July is about flying musket balls and cannonballs, tearing through our enemies who would have denied us our freedom. And I thought, wow, yeah, that is why we celebrate our Independence Day, because that's what it actually cost. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. It's 870-275-9799. There's also, by the way, I love talking about the Declaration of Independence from a theological standpoint, because there are some pretty deep theological statements that we collectively as a nation were making when we signed the Declaration of Independence, or when those men signed it. I mean, how many countries, how many nations are willing to recognize the one true God and found their country in submission to Him by just saying, hey, we're not the end all be all. We're not the supreme authority in this life or the next. That was a big deal, very profound when you consider totalitarian states, monarchies. They tell their subjects that they are the sovereign, that they are the ones that dispense rights to the people. Our founding fathers said, no, we're not going to get behind that idea, because it's factually inaccurate. Again, the telephone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. We're going to get right to it. You're going to hear a lot about AOC. Today in the news, you're going to hear a lot about her on the border. You're going to hear a lot about a Facebook group that allegedly, I haven't looked into this, but according to reports, has a lot of Customs and Border Patrol agents who are members of this Facebook group, as well as former Customs and Border Patrol agents who are members. And pretty apparently, according to reports, it's a pretty raunchy place in terms of them discussing just a whole, really, from what I can tell, a plethora of political issues, including the border. And of course, AOC has found this. The mainstream media found this, and they say, it's a racist, sexist Facebook post. And of course, they're going to use this to disparage the Border Patrol agents. All of them, every one of them, is what they're going to do. You're going to hear a lot about that. What you will not hear is this clip from Senator Ted Cruz, who went down to the border. Go ahead, Joe. This is Senator Ted Cruz. He actually talks about, dare I say it, human trafficking while he's at the border. Listen.
Way. Earlier today, I visited the Central Processing Center here in the Valley, visited the McAllen headquarters. One of the more disturbing figures that I heard from the chief is in 2014, not too many years ago, of the adult men crossing illegally into this country, roughly 1% had a child with them. Today, roughly 50% of the adult men crossing into the Rio Grande sector have a child with them. The reason for that, the fault of that, is the U.S. Congress, because we have told the traffickers, the human traffickers, we've told the drug traffickers, if you bring a child, that child is essentially a get-out-of-jail-free card. It is an incentive from the United States Congress. Go and find a small child and take that arduous journey. Risk that child's life. And I'll tell you, far too many of those children face physical abuse, they face sexual abuse, they face neglect. And a growing problem we're seeing is fraudulent family units. Groups that present as a family unit that tell the Border Patrol they're one happy family. There was recently a pilot program done in the Rio Grande Valley using rapid DNA to test family units that said they were family units. It found roughly 30% of those family units were fraudulent. In other words, the adults weren't related to the kids.
Stolen children.
We're hearing more and more reports of horrific things like children being rented to those crossing illegally. You know, this is a political environment where a lot of politicians like to talk about their enormous compassion, their enormous virtue. Let me tell you, nobody who is compassionate, nobody who is virtuous, nobody who gives a damn about human beings would want even a single day to perpetuate these loopholes and put more children in harm's way. We ought to be angry. We ought to be angry at politicians that wash their hands of this problem. You know, every time I come down to the Valley, every time I come down to the border, I try to visit with Border Patrol agents. I try to visit with law enforcement, local leaders. What I'm hearing in South Texas and all along the border is this is a crisis that is overwhelming our ability to deal with it. It's overwhelming our infrastructure. It's overwhelming our health care system. It's overwhelming just here in the Rio Grande Valley. Chief told me that on average, one woman a day, they're taking to the hospital to deliver a baby. On average, one a day. Imagine being 8-9 months pregnant, making that journey. I visited with too many South Texas ranchers and farmers that have found the bodies of people abandoned, children, pregnant women abandoned to die. It is time to end this crisis, and the only way we'll end this crisis is for Congress to stop the political posturing and solve the problem, close the loopholes so that children are not subject to exploitation as they are right now. With that, we're happy to take questions.
All right, stop. I wanted you to hear that this morning because, you know, you're going to hear nothing. It's going to be wall-to-wall coverage of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her trip down to the border yesterday, where according to some reports, she yelled at Border Patrol agents. The Daily Wire, though, I think has the best take on Ocasio-Cortez. She's making some claims about toilet water. Ryan Saavedra, multiple U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials responded to salacious claims made by Socialist Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She went to the CBP detention center, and Ocasio-Cortez repeatedly claimed, without evidence, that CBP officials told detained female migrants to drink from the toilet while Ocasio-Cortez was present. Then, when pressed by a reporter if she actually heard a CBP official say that, Ocasio-Cortez refused to answer. Multiple CBP officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity told the Washington Examiner and the Daily Mail how Ocasio-Cortez acted inside the facility and say that she distorted the entire situation. A border agent who was there told the Examiner, "So this is what happened with the migrant and drinking water from the toilet. She wanted water, didn't know how to use the faucet in the cell, and drank from the toilet. She never told AOC that we made her drink from the toilet. AOC, of course, changed it. This was when she, the migrant, was apprehended and brought into the facility." Daily Mail editor David Martosco tweeted out a photo from inside the CBP detention that showed a toilet that was connected to a sink that states potable water. The Daily Mail reported, quote, "But a CBP official said Monday in the early evening that plumbing fixtures at the locations Ocasio-Cortez visited are standard-issue jail appliances with sinks that dispense safe drinking water attached to toilets in a single unit." So you had a migrant that didn't understand. Now, what does that say? You didn't understand how to use the unit and was thirsty. Of course, that's what we have. No one is drinking toilet water. They're drinking, they're drinking water that's perfectly fine to drink from the sink attached to the toilet. It's what you would find in every municipal jail in the United States. Ocasio-Cortez confirmed in a tweet that the photo of the toilet that Martosco posted was the type of toilet that was in the facility. So, the Daily Wire here continues. A witness who was at the facility described Ocasio-Cortez's behavior towards CBP officials as being threatening, saying she was crying and screaming and yelling. I mean, can you imagine this? Sounds like she was quite the handful. A second CBP official described one of Ocasio-Cortez's outbursts, telling the Examiner that the 29-year-old, quote, said something under her breath, "Oh, all these guys in here are going to F me," end quote. The agents are standing there behind the computers, the official continued. One of the agents laughed at something he was saying to another agent, and she got irate and flipped out. Now they're under investigation for it. She took it as they were laughing at her and screams at them and says, "What's so funny?" Oh, man. So was it like a Goodfellas situation? I was like, do I amuse you? Am I a clown to you? No, yo, what's funny? No, you tell me. You said I was funny. Funny how? Funny how? Tell me how. I mean, is that the kind of... I mean, it's just according to reports. I mean, who knows what actually happened. This is all you're going to hear about for the next, I mean, it makes me think of just to be honest, I mean, we're going into the 4th of July weekend, and people are, going to be getting together with their friends and their families. You know, what are they going to be talking about? Well, you wait. Media's going to have a field day with this today and the next day. Not just Ocasio-Cortez and her claim about forcing a migrant to drink toilet water, but this new Facebook group that they've discovered. They're going to report on it initially, then later on we'll actually find out the facts behind it. Because I think there are some photoshopped images on there that are very crude and are and are tasteless, if you will, vulgar images. But that's what you're going to hear, and they're going to try to, from what I can tell so far, they're just going to start disparaging the Border Patrol agents and acting like the Border Patrol. They've got to, right? I mean, she's got to go this way. She has no choice. She said that there are concentration camps down there. So she's got to go down there and find something. I mean, the newsflash, it should be Ocasio-Cortez goes to the border and doesn't find gas chambers. Well, that's really what the headline should be, because she said that they were concentration camps. And it's ridiculous. But that's not what they're going to say. So she got to go down there and find something outrageous because, I mean, she's too far in. And she's not. She refuses to say that she was wrong when she compared what the situation at the border with, putting people on trains, shipping them to camps, and murdering all of them. I mean, that she's not going to walk that statement back. So she's got to find something outrageous while she's down there. We're going to take a break. It's Conduit News this morning, and we've got a great show for. Oh, you know what? Coming up at 7:33, I do want to preview this real quick. Coming up at 7:33, I'm going to interview one of the authors. His name is Benjamin Powell. He's one of the authors of a book entitled "Socialism Sucks: Two Economists Drink Their Way Through the Unfree World." And what they discover is not only does socialism suck, but it's apparently a very rare and difficult thing to find a quality beer in socialist countries. Imagine that. And you would think that'd be like the one place you would need to drink the most, but not so much. We'll be interviewing them, or be interviewing one of those authors, Benjamin Powell, at 7:33 this morning. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us. Joining us now again, we once again have State Representative Brant Smith is in studio with us. Brant, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Paul. Spent a couple of days down at the Capitol. Sat in on that hearing yesterday when the discussions on carrying guns in the state of Arkansas came up, and it was a very interesting discussion that muddied the waters once again.
Wow. So the just real quick. So the resolution clarifying Arkansas's gun laws, are they just kind of ignoring it?
Well, I don't think they want to admit that the legislature makes the laws, and that even though we tried to clarify what the law actually is, they don't accept it. And at one point, the ASP, Colonel Bryant, and the attorney for the ASP were even told point blank, look, your job.
Hey folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your number one source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com. Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News The Parrot. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On
behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope, if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so the situation with Arkansas and China is interesting. I'm going to have a little follow-up story on that coming up here at 7:05. I mean, to say that Arkansas's chief economic development policy, I mean, our overlords are certainly doubling down on it. They want these deals with China to go through. During the Trump trade war, when it looked like much of these deals were on hold, we did have stories last year that the Arkansas Economic Development Commission are in daily contact with the folks of the Shandong province, trying to make sure these deals happen. And there's been some developments on this, because we do have reports from last week buried in that article where Mike Preston got a $50,000 bonus for the third or fourth year in a row or whatever. The governor does comment on moving forward with these these communist Chinese deals with the Arkansas taxpayer. And so I'll tell you more about that. But there's also even more of an interesting development where, the parodies that we do on this program are designed to be funny, comical, satirical in nature to get people to change behaviors. That's really the goal. I mean, yeah, and it's to get us to laugh at them. They cannot stand, by the way, being laughed at and being mocked, because they have political power, and everything they do must be taken seriously. Everything they do must be legitimate, important. But it's not all the time. Just because you're in power doesn't mean everything you do is important. And so, we when the population thinks something's fine, I can't tell you how many people call me about the China-Delphia parody, and they say, that is really, really funny. Well, let me just tell you something. They're not, apparently they don't care about it at all, because wait until you see what I'm going to show you at 7:05. It's as if I wrote a parody, and it's like the Arkansas Economic Development Commission decided to write a parody. In a way, I'll share that story with you coming up at 7:05. Don't go anywhere, folks. It's Conduit News. I want you to check out the program. If you're listening on the radio, I would like for you to check the program out online at conduitnews.com. You got to check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News, where you can get the meme of the day. You want to like that page. You want to make sure that you watch the program on the Facebook page, as well as radio. It's another medium if you're not in your car. Maybe you're at work and you need to watch it there. Make sure your boss you don't want to get in trouble or anything. But if he's a liberal, maybe you want to wear some headphones. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. Thanks for being with us. Joining us now again, we once again have State Representative Brant Smith is in studio with us. Brant, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Paul. Spent a couple of days down at the Capitol. Sat in on that hearing yesterday when the discussions on carrying guns in the state of Arkansas came up, and it was a very interesting discussion that muddied the waters once again.
Wow. So the just real quick. So the resolution clarifying Arkansas's gun laws, are they just kind of ignoring it?
Well, I don't think they want to admit that the legislature makes the laws, and that even though we tried to clarify what the law actually is, they don't accept it. And at one point, you know, the ASP, Colonel Bryant, and the attorney for the ASP were even told point blank, look, your job is to enforce the law. We make the laws. And I don't think that's set very well, but, you know, to their credit, they handled every question to the best of their ability, but they were not going to give an inch.
Wow. Well, I'm going to go back and listen to the entire thing, and maybe we'll get some of the...
Be interesting for you.
So I want you to start from the beginning. You got contacted by a constituent,
right,
about the Arkansas School for Math and Science down in Hot Springs.
Right,
So tell us about
ASMSA down in Hot Springs. It's they just recently celebrated in May their 25th anniversary. Just so people know, the reason I'm involved with finding out really what's going on at that school was I've got constituents here in Jonesboro that reached out to me very upset at the way their child was being bullied, treated, ostracized, and a lot of that centered, it doesn't have anything to do with academics because it's a very strong academic school. But when a student wants to be involved in student government, all the activities, plus has a life of their own where they may run, exercise, work out, and then that student is considered to have some kind of a mental deficiency because they're so energetic, it causes parents to wonder what's going on with my child at this school.
So you're saying that there was a constituent, they have our kid down there, and there was some sort of disciplinary action taken for active lifestyle. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, because she eats healthy. She is participatory in so many, if not all of the activities.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, a couple of write-ups here. Just real quick, today's July the 2nd, so it's a big deal. I don't think I even talked about this last year. But July 2nd, 1776, is the day the Continental Congress voted for your independence from Great Britain. John Adams, in his writings, even noted that July 2nd would be remembered in the annals of American history and would be marked with fireworks and celebrations. By the way, the fireworks show, Joe, on the 4th of July is supposed to be amazing in D.C. Yes. They're saying that the president is very involved in the Independence Day celebration coming up on Thursday. I think he's even requested for military presence, like in a kind of a parade thing. You know, he tried to do this parade maybe a year or so ago. I'm talking about like tanks and like a military display of our might, if you will. But they're saying this fireworks show this year is going to be fantastic, and I believe the president's scheduled to give an address at the National Mall. So definitely want to be watching for that. But today is July 2nd. The written Declaration of Independence was dated July 4th, but wasn't actually signed. According to archives.gov, wasn't actually completely signed until August 2nd. 56 delegates signed the document, although they all were not present at that final day in August. So it was kind of like hey, when you get a chance, we're going to need you to sign this document where, you'll be hanged and probably, who knows. But we'll all hang, but we just need to get you, we need you to get around to it. Benjamin Franklin, if we don't hang together, we surely will all hang separately. Then there's this website, the Transylvania Times. Never really heard of these guys. Did you know why, or do you know why Independence Day is celebrated on the 4th? The Continental Congress declared its independence from Great Britain on July 2nd, 1776. If that date raises an eyebrow, it should. Independence Day in the United States has long been celebrated on July 4th, which would seem to be 2 days late. But upon closer examination, it seems Americans are not really celebrating their independence 2 days later than they should be. According to the National Constitution Center, the Continental Congress approved a resolution declaring its independence from Great Britain on July 2nd. However, a document still needed to be drafted to explain the decision to the general public. Such a document was already in the works, but it took 2 days for the men of Congress to agree on a final version. The resulting document, known as the Declaration of Independence, was sent to John Dunlap, an Irish printer who served under George Washington during the American Revolutionary War, who subsequently printed roughly 200 broadsides. Still, the Declaration of Independence was not read to the public until July 8th, 1776, when Colonel John Nixon did so in Philadelphia on what is now known as Independence Square. It was nearly a month later, August 2nd, 1776, when most members of the Continental Congress actually signed the Declaration of Independence in Philadelphia. And of course, the first signer was John Hancock, who wrote his name really big there. Now, did he write it big because he's the first signer and didn't realize? John Mulaney has he's a comedian, a writer and comedian. John Mulaney has a hilarious stand-up. He does what we all do. He says something like, ever try to write happy birthday like on a big banner? And you start with this giant H. And then you realize, oh no, I've made the H too big. I don't have enough room for the, APPY. And then you immediately forget the lesson when you're done with the Y because you enormous B. And then you're like, oh no, I don't have it. So maybe John Hancock was like huge, and then he realized, oh, I didn't leave enough room for my friends to sign. There's like 55 more of you guys that got to sign this document. The truth is, Joe, you're not far off. It is said that John Hancock was essentially the Han Solo of the of the movement, and that meaning he was a smuggler, and he was not paying his taxes because he believed in freedom, and he was wanted. He was a wanted man, and so it is said, and who knows if this is true, but it is said that he made it big because he wanted it to be basically like a giant middle finger to the British government and to the crown, so that they see his name first, because those were the types of men that the crown was messing with, right? I wonder how many, and I've asked this before, but it's an honest question. If you take the men that we have in power today, if you put them under the same circumstances, I wonder if they would sign that document. Would they have the courage to sign the document? I'm not so sure. I think there'd be a lot of our politicians that would be so in love with the power and the pomp and circumstance of the status quo that they would be loyalists to the crown, or very, certainly sympathizers. They'd be redcoats. I don't think they would. I don't know. I don't think most of our men would sign that document if it meant if they were wrong. It means they lose their land, their families, their lives, their disgrace, everything that they had come to build. They risk their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. And that is, I think that's something that's totally lost on us. Likewise, and I don't mean to make a direct comparison, but it kind of goes in line with what I was talking about yesterday with the president walking into North Korea. You'd be amazed at how your average person is not giving the president any credit at all for what he did walking in with North Korea, walking across that border, having this relationship with Kim Jong-un that actually makes us more safe, not less safe, when it comes to the threat of nuclear war. This idea of nuclear war used to be something the left was terrified about, and up until the point that their narrative that Donald Trump was going to cause a nuclear war has fallen flat on its face so far, and Trump has stolen their biggest issue, which used to be the party of peace, not war, and diplomacy first. Now that the president is actually engaged in that, they can't stand it. If Barack Obama had walked across that border, it would be still today wall-to-wall coverage. You know it. I know it. They hate this man. And there are still, especially people that are my age, millennials, that continue to think that President Trump is not an intelligent man. And it drives me nuts. And I'm not saying that I didn't ever think that. I didn't vote for the man in the primary. But I'm judging my opinion at this point based on results. And there is a clear strategy behind everything this man does. But putting all of that aside, maybe you still disagree with me. How many of you would have walked across that border and shook hands with Kim Jong-un? How many of you want the job of President of the United States? So, I mean, I think especially considering we're talking about, the Declaration of Independence, the 4th of July, the formation of our government, the concept of leadership, I think most of us would say, honestly, that we don't want to be President of the United States because we don't want that level of responsibility. I think most of us would say that. Okay, because it's such a big job. So look at the results and look at the job that if you don't want to do it, doesn't that in some way lessen your standard of perfection that you're, putting on the office? And then just look at the results and then ask yourself the question, when it comes to facing down a dictator like Kim Jong-un, forging a relationship with him that started by calling him out on Twitter and saying that if you keep doing this, we're going to destroy your country and fire and fury are going to rain down, going from that to the relationship they have now and stepping across the border, I just want you to ask yourself, would you have done it? And do you have the spine and intestinal fortitude to do a job in the way that President Trump is doing the job? Yeah, maybe you would do it differently or the style, but would you be willing to handle the stress? Would you be willing to handle the pressure? And I don't think most of us have even asked ourselves these questions. All we're doing is listening to the media tell us what an evil man he is. And he's not an evil man. He's doing a service to us. We may not agree with all of it. I can promise you this, the relationship he has forged with Kim Jong-un makes us safer from nuclear war. He's getting zero credit for this. I know an agreement hasn't been signed. I know there's a bogus New York Times story saying that Trump is trying to say that, well, maybe we have a nuclear freeze. And, of course, everyone is denying this. They're trying to box the president in. They're hoping he fails. It's a lot different than Rush Limbaugh hoping Obama failed at socialism. It's a whole lot different than hoping that Obama fails at socialized medicine and expanding government. They want President Trump to fail. I think they would rather have a war where people die just so President Trump looks like he couldn't get the job done. who's evil in that situation, by the way? Who's the evil one? Or where are the evil intentions coming from in that scenario? And that's not a straw man, by the way. It's a self-evident truth. They're letting their personal hatred for somebody cloud literally everything they do, every issue they interpret. And by the way, in the Democrats, and the media, essentially the same thing, they have a huge problem on their hands because they're having these debates where they're talking about issues that very, very slim percentages of people actually care about. They don't care about reproductive justice for a trans man that becomes a woman to have the right to an abortion. What is that? What is that? Julian Castro. By the way, I mean, Julian Castro, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're not going to get the nomination because your last name's Castro. You're just not. They're not. I mean, they're more transparent about their socialist tendencies, but they're not that transparent. Okay, so just. But listen to this. Joe Pollak actually has a great piece on this, and believe it or not, CNN actually admitting that the Democrats are in trouble as well. Breitbart News, the near unanimous verdict across the mainstream media about last week's Democratic debates, from the New York Times all the way to the Wall Street Journal, is that the party has moved so far to the left that it's jeopardizing its chances to unseat President Donald Trump in 2020. The concern from the left-leaning New York Times can be interpreted as a warning to the Democratic presidential primary field that they need to find a way to shift back toward the center, even superficially, right away. Now, see, I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, and they're like, well, they're not going to shift back to the center till the Democratic primary is over. Yeah, and if they do that, then Donald Trump will have a field day. It's because they can't stay on these crazy pronoun issues, for the next, 6 months? they can't do it. I'm just telling you, the American people, a lot of people said that Trump won re-election after that first night of debates. And I know that's crazy, but I'm just telling you, what person up there is talking about something that the average American cares about? So, the media did not treat the leftward drift of the Democratic candidates as a problem until frontrunner Joe Biden looked vulnerable on Thursday. The former vice president had been portrayed as a moderate option, the wiser elder statesman who makes little girls uncomfortable by touching them on the shoulders and stroking their hair and kissing them in a weird, awkward way. I'm adding all of this to the story, by the way, but you can go to joebiden.info, the parody site, and actually see real videos that I predict Facebook and Google will ban people and censor them if he's the nominee, and we start putting out all these videos of Joe Biden being very, very, very inappropriate. I predict you will get banned, and Facebook and YouTube will try to scrub the internet of these very strange videos. Something to think about. The former vice president has been portrayed as a moderate option. Okay, but Biden neither looked wise nor stable last Thursday. The well-planned attack by Senator Kamala Extract Harris. By the way, Kamala Extract Harris saved Laura Roslin. Look it up. Senator Kamala Extract Harris on Biden's positions on race may have inflicted a mortal political wound. Yet even absent Harris's attack, Biden would have been in trouble. That's because he joined the rest of the field in raising his hand to endorse the proposal of providing illegal aliens with free health care. The radical policy was unthinkable until recently. In 2009, do you remember Representative Joe Wilson was called a racist because he was called a racist, then he apologized because Obama said, illegal immigrants will not it will not cover illegal aliens under Obamacare. It will not do it. And then you hear Joe Wilson, "You lie. You lie," is what he said. And then he had to apologize, and the media called him racist. Says, you wouldn't have done that if that was a white president. You'd have never stood up and said, you lie, if he was a white president. Okay, so just so you know, in 2009, the Democrats were aware of how poorly it polled to give illegal aliens taxpayer-funded health care. And every one of them on the stage raised their hand and said, yeah, I'm all for it. And so now the liberal New York Times are realizing that the Democrats are so far to the left that they have a problem. As a matter of fact, we have time for this. Go to the Zero Hedge article. This is the headline, CNN admits 2020 Democrats, voters, you're all wrong strategy is the dumbest ever. This is S.E. Cupp, who is, pretty liberal in her. I mean, she's on CNN and doesn't really like the president. I mean, I think she used to be a libertarian, I thought, when I first learned of S.E. Cupp. Anyway, but listen to her segment. This go scroll down. This is CNN's S.E. Cupp. Click play on this. I want you to hear just a little bit of what they're saying about CNN. They are worried now that Biden is vulnerable and doesn't, he can't really talk without slurring his speech. They're worried that is there anybody that's going to be able to beat Trump if you're talking about essentially, reproductive justice and illegal free health care for illegal aliens. Listen.
Here's tonight's headline. Raise your hand if you want to beat Donald.
Back up.
Welcome to Unfiltered. The president, who spent the latter half of this week glad-handing with dictators abroad, was unusually plugged into what was happening on the other side of the aisle. A TV backstage at the G20 in Osaka, Japan, was running the Democratic debates. And this morning, the president took time away from presidenting to weigh in on the seminal moment of the debates when Senator Kamala Harris challenged former Vice President Joe Biden on race.
He didn't do well, certainly, and maybe the facts weren't necessarily on his side. I think she was given too much credit for what she did. Wasn't that outstanding? And I think probably he was hit harder than he should have been hit. I thought that he didn't respond great. I wouldn't say it was one.
All right, so that's the president. Now skip ahead to exactly 1 minute. Right there. Okay. Listen to this.
Here's tonight's headline. Raise your hand if you want to beat Donald Trump. The first round of Democratic presidential primary debates was an overload of candidates using their limited time in the spotlight to lob out bold proposals and clunky catchphrases in an attempt to capture voters' attention. But in an effort to out-left each other in the primary, are they setting themselves up for failure in the general? Proposals that were widely agreed upon by the candidates included support for a woman's unfettered access to abortion, free health care for people who live here illegally. Other items that had some support on the debate stage: government-run health care for all, free college tuition, and decriminalizing illegal border crossings. For people who, I don't know, think that there should be some abortion restrictions, who believe we should probably work on increasing access to health care for American citizens, people who might like to keep their private insurance, who don't want to pay other students' college debt, who cross the border legally and pay taxes. Are there any Democrats running for those people?
No, stop.
People who, I'm guessing, probably...
Anyway, I'm telling you, that's what they're worried about. Not a single Democrat is running for those people. Matter of fact, if you don't want to pay for illegal aliens health care, you are a racist. How about that one? If you don't want to pay for illegal aliens health care, you're a racist. How are you going to win an election when that's essentially the face that you're putting forward? And Joe Biden ain't it. Back in a minute.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Be involved in student government activities, and because of some of the pushback that she received, she was even told, you'll never take part in anything to be elected down here at the school.
Okay.
So they were trying to marginalize her for just being
being successful?
Yes, because they evidently it focuses back on the privilege walk.
Okay, stop. What's a privilege walk? I don't know what this is.
Paul, come on.
Okay.
Aren't you privileged? You're a white male.
Okay, so
I'm a white male. I'm privileged just because of my race. But
so there's is that an official thing? A privilege walk?
It is an exercise that I've been informed that when juniors enter the school during their orientation period, they go through what is called a privilege walk. And
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome back to the show. Let's see. Issues claiming African American while being Jamaican. You can't. No, Sam. Sam on Facebook. You can't bring that up. Ooh. Talk about being racist. I'm just joking. No. Sam on Facebook raises a point that there are some people bringing up the fact that Kamala extract is a fictional drug in the Battlestar Galactica series. I'm sorry, no. There are some people bringing up that if you bring up that Kamala extract Harris is actually trying to speak on behalf of African Americans when she's half Jamaican and half Indian, and that somehow it's a little disingenuous. And here's the thing, like but there's something to this in and of itself, because if you're on the right and you're bringing this up as an apparent hypocrisy, the left is going to call you racist, but the people on the right bringing this up are only doing this trying to play by your rules, because you have to have a victim and an oppressor. Well, so the question is then, are you an actual victim? You know what I'm saying? And so they're only trying to go by your new neo-Marxist class warfare rules and apply them in a Democratic primary. You can't bring that up, though, Sam. I'm telling you, people are out there saying you cannot bring up the fact that Kamala Harris is Jamaican. And a lot of people are saying, well, that's not, how many Jamaicans do you know call themselves Africans? They call themselves Jamaicans. it's certainly going to be interesting.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
New incoming students, and they will say, if you come from a family where you have a mother and father cohabitating, your home, take a step forward. If you're from a single parent home, take a step back. If you've got more than 50 books in your home, reading books, whatever, take a step forward. If you don't have books like that, take a step back. So by the end of the exercise, they have completely separated
the haves and the have-nots.
The haves, the have-nots, those with privilege and those that do not. I think one of the questions dealt with, does your family have personal transportation, more than one car? Take a step forward.
And the officials at the school are the ones asking these questions, or is this something that the students initiate?
I think this was an exercise conducted by Res Life because it is a dormitory style.
Right. They go to live
school.
there. They go to live there.
And so I attended. This family here in Jonesboro asked me to go down and sit in on the visitors board, kind of like a school board meeting, an update on what's happening at the school. And after I attended a committee meeting or two, I believe it was May 6th, I drove on down to Hot Springs, attended that meeting, and the room was packed. It's a small room, but it was packed. Every chair filled with standing room only.
Is that because there's more parents that have complaints about what's going on?
Well, I didn't know that when I first got there, and I went around and greeted everybody, shook hands, introduced myself, and I did have my Brant Smith State Representative badge on, so they knew, hey, a legislator's here. When we got to the point in that visitors board meeting where Tim Barnes, the chair, asked for public comments or any new business or, discussion, people lined up to talk. And it was everything from one young man claiming, he was sexually assaulted by a student on campus 3 weeks prior to that board meeting, and nothing was done about it, to faculty members that had been mistreated and fired. There were lawsuits pending with some of these people. Parents stood up and talked about the great education their children got as far as academics go, but that they were literally browbeat down every day. There were individuals who discussed the privilege walk, as I mentioned.
So browbeating because of why?
Well, bullying.
Okay.
I don't know what the motive for that was.
Okay.
Other than it kind of spun off from the privilege walk. And I sat there listening to all of this, and it just got worse. But to Mr. Tim Barnes' credit, even though there was a limit set for each person to speak, I think it might have been 5 minutes, people were trying to get their statement made, and he allowed them, even though the alarm sounded, to finish their thought. And so I was really proud of him for doing that, because I've been in meetings where once you're cut off, you're cut off. And he allowed people to speak completely what was on their mind. And so the center of gravity, and we talk about that, I guess, a lot more in the military, of where the problems are or what the situation is and who's involved, apparently focuses on the director for the ASMSA family down there. And his name is Corey Alderdice. And, he made his presentation, but people they felt like he needed to step up and acknowledge that as director, the buck stops on his desk. And he made claims later that he didn't know about the privilege walk. And I'm thinking, you've got a small school. Joe, what is it, like 250 students max? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if you've got a school with 250 students and they're all top.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
I can't remember what they were.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. Hour number 2. Good morning to everybody out there. Some of you having your first sip of coffee. Thanks for starting your day with us here. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine here. Slogan up on the board right now is tax reform equals tax increases. That's just kind of in a nutshell. I was talking with some friends the other day. It's like, well, it'd be great to be wrong once in a while when it comes to what is going to happen. Meaning, trying to predict the economic policies, the tax policies that are going to come out of Little Rock, Nottingham. Trying to reflect the tax policies coming out of Nottingham, is which is going to be higher taxes. But they had a whole task force on tax reform so that they could increase the net tax burden on us by $70.5 million this fiscal year, which started yesterday. I mean, go figure. Anyway, so, yeah, tax reform equals tax increases. This is what, if you have been listening to Conduit News, you guys knew this was coming. I mean, we did everything. I did everything I could. We did everything we could to, I was trying to give the task force the benefit of the doubt, saying, okay, maybe they're going to do this, you know? I mean, it's not moving as fast as I would like. You know, things kind of move slow sometimes. You can't get, that. Okay, all right, well, and I kept saying I'd love to eat crow. I would love to eat crow because that would mean government's smaller and we get to keep more of our money, and I'm not going to be eating crow. I mean, the task force on tax reform was a task farce. They increased your taxes $70 million. $75 million in the first fiscal year. So, anyway, I mean, I said this day in and day out. I said, the only thing that matters at the end of the day, are we paying more, are we paying less, are we paying the same? And we're paying more. I mean, and there are plenty of politicians out there that agree with that sentiment. I mean, they came on this show and said so. Plenty of state reps and some senators that were like, yeah, taxes are going up on the people. So it is what it is. And in the meantime, we're giving away, I don't know if you've seen these headlines, but the state of Arkansas is giving away money. Like, we have these state agencies that are giving away money. They're taking record money from us because they need it for roads. And then you've got this theater on the squared or theater squared or whatever getting millions of dollars, okay, from the government. And then you've got I believe that Northwest Arkansas Airport needs a road project funded or something. I mean, it's just very, very strange. Very strange. You had the transportation department giving money to build a building on the University of Arkansas campus. Why are they doing that when they're needing more money to build roads? Why are they building buildings with it? It's very, very, very strange. And we still have people that want these Chinese deals to continue. And I told you I would talk about this. I'm telling you, the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is essentially writing my parodies for me. They're writing my parodies for me. But before we get to that, let's talk about this article from last week. I mentioned it briefly last week that Michael Preston, the head of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, for the fourth year in a row, got a $54,000 bonus. Now, this Michael Wickline has the story here. But buried towards the end of the article, we have a quote from Governor Asa Hutchinson about, let's see here, about China and where we are on China. All right? So this is something that I thought was interesting because a lot of people may be under the impression that the Chinese deals are on hold because of Donald Trump's trade policies with China. This is Representative Dan Douglas. Okay, so Representative Dan Douglas, Republican Bentonville, who chairs the House Counterpart Committee, said Preston, quote, is doing fairly good with the state recently announcing several new businesses. He said he didn't know how the status of the Chinese-owned Sun Paper's proposal, paper mill near Arkadelphia. So he didn't know about the status of the Sun Paper from the Shandong province. Sun Paper announced the mill in 2016 and has pledged to invest $1.8 billion and create 350 jobs. Hutchinson said Wednesday that, quote, Sun Paper project is proceeding, and we are very pleased that we will own an American city. I'm sorry, no, he didn't say that. Sun Paper project is proceeding, and we are very pleased that the environmental engineering work has been filed by Sun Paper for the air quality permit. Public hearings took place a couple of weeks ago, and there were no objections. That means the Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality and the Federal Environmental Protection Agency are reviewing the application, and the state could issue permits in the next couple of months, the governor said in a written statement. The state hopes for a spring 2020 groundbreaking. So, who knows? I mean, it looks like these deals are, you know, we still have the governor. I'm telling you, I don't understand this at all. The CIA and FBI are raising red flags about China, intellectual property theft. The vice president is going and trying to tell people, listen, China is a big threat. I talk to people in government. I talk to people at high levels of government outside the state. They don't understand why anybody, let alone a Republican governor, would be doing business with the communist Chinese, would want to welcome these communist Chinese companies in here. They don't understand it. Folks, if these were Russian companies, people would be losing their minds. But for some reason, China is okay because China is still a textbook communist country. And I think there are people that think that, oh, well, you know, then somehow that's acceptable because they lobby our politicians. And that's another whole thing that we need to ask about. Why China? What are there other incentives going on? You have to ask it. Tucker Carlson's done an entire expose on Fox News about, and not to mention Peter Schweitzer in his new book, saying that if you take Peter Schweitzer's new book's basically saying that there's nothing illegal about China coming in and buying a United States bank and then employing political families' children or politicians' children at the bank, paying them outrageous salaries. There's nothing illegal about that. That's not considered wrong or illegal in America. Go read Peter Schweitzer's book. It answers a lot of questions, but raises even more. Why China? Why are we continuing to give taxpayer dollars to China so that they can come in here, use our resources, and send their profits back home? There were 2 individuals indicted last year for stealing Arkansas rice technology, Chinese nationals. They steal our stuff, right? They're not creating it themselves. They've got a 100-year plan. It doesn't make any sense, okay? We're in the process. Arkansas farmers are in the process. American farmers are in the process. They're going through a lot right now. And they're willing to, and many of them are patriots, and they're willing to hurt now so that we can regain our sovereignty in the world market. Eventually, hopefully, nobody has tariffs. There are no tariffs. Eventually, that's the goal, okay? Whether you agree with it or not, that's the goal. And if that's what we're doing as a country, and that's what I would call some, some nationalism I can get behind, why would we want to undermine it by bringing the Communist Chinese, these are not private companies. They're not private companies. They are communist embassies that we're welcoming here in the nation. And the FBI says they got investigations about Chinese nationals in all 50 states and what they're doing here. It makes absolutely no sense. I think we can have a positive relationship with China moving forward. But why China? Why not American company? If you're going to give taxpayer money to incentivize people or businesses to move to Arkansas, why not find some American companies to do it? Why China? It boggles the mind. And if this were Russia, people would be having a cow, right? Because Russia is some huge threat. When China is a much bigger threat economically than Russia is. I mean, they're invading the South China Sea. That's like the distance from Florida down to South America. That's how far the Chinese are going from their mainland into the South China Sea. And go listen to the vice president. I mean, they're using political means. They're infiltrating Hollywood. I saw that movie, The Meg, and it was like a Chinese tourist promotion, towards the end there. And I thought, wow, it's clear that the Chinese paid for this movie in some way. And you know what? Our Vice President Mike Pence even said that the Chinese government are influencing local politicians. I mean, at all levels of government. And we've got a video that demonstrates just that. And the stark contrast, from what I can tell, between the Trump administration and what the state of Arkansas is doing with China. There doesn't appear to be any slowdown. It's like we put all of our eggs in the economic development basket of China, and we're not willing to pull out. We're not willing to stop. Now, I don't know what, I promise you, the Hutchinson administration has had conversations with the Trump administration about this. I promise you they have. I mean, I have no idea what was said. Maybe these deals are acceptable to the Trump administration. I don't know. But I think that we definitely know that they've slowed down. We've got multiple reports saying that the trade war has affected these deals. As they should. I don't know of anybody who falls under the developing nation category of the World Trade Organization rules. I know no, except for one, China, that can be classified as a developing nation under the WTO and invest $1 billion in another country. Something is wrong here. And the Arkansas Economic Development Commission is writing my parodies for me. I'll give you an example. Go to this article, Joe. This is from the Arkansas EDC, Arkansas Economic Development Commission, arkansasedc.com. You guys aren't going to believe this. You're not going to believe what I'm about to show you. Headline from June 10th. Foreign direct investment brings jobs, investment home to Arkansas. So it's this big, propaganda piece about how great China is. Do you see? No. Scroll down or scroll back up. I want you to see that. Okay. Take my photo off there. Okay. Do you see what that is? That is a graphic of the communist state of China. But do you know what that photo is? Do you know what that photo is, Joe? This is hilarious. This is hilarious to me. That is a photo of Hawksbill Crag, superimposed as the nation, the communist nation of China. Look at that. Hawksbill Crag, that is right on the edge of the Ozark National Forest, the northern part. It is elevation of 413 feet, and it's a beautiful place. There's a lot of people that like to have their picture taken there. Now go back to the Arkansas Economic Development Committee, and there it is, superimposed in China, with the headline, Foreign Direct Investment Brings Jobs to Arkansas. Now, I don't know about you, but I think somebody is out of touch. That's weird. And you're writing my parodies for me. I mean, China-delphia, hello? Hello? I don't get it, man. I don't get it. I mean, the whole point of the China-delphia parody was to suggest that the Chinese are essentially buying Arkansas, and the Arkansas Economic Development Commission creates a graphic with a very popular peak in Arkansas and superimposes it over the nation of China. It's weird, man. Like there's some sort of unity going on here. Like I don't know, man. Like, is there some sort of foreign policy branch in Arkansas government I'm not aware of? I thought we were a member of the United States. I thought Arkansas was a member of the United States. I don't know. It's crazy. That is nuts. By the way, do you know who sent me this photo? You know who sent me this article? Notice it slipped through the cracks June 10th. I mean, we haven't covered it. It's July 2nd here. You know who sent me this? Somebody in government sent me this. That's all I'll say, but somebody in government sent me this. Because there are people who don't know what's going on. There are people who say, what is going on with this strategy? They don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to them. Sorry, I don't mean to get so worked up, but I think it's something that needs to be talked about, something that needs to be discussed. Listen to this propaganda from your government, your taxpayer-funded government. Foreign direct investment is vital to the economic health of all states, including Arkansas. Foreign direct investment is vital. Vital. So in order for the health of Arkansas's economy, our own government says that we need foreign investment here. I don't know about you, but I mean, America first or national. I mean, I don't want to be dependent on foreign investment. We're Americans. Good grief. Don't you know that they just can't stand the arguments I'm making right now, by the way? But I mean, it's common sense. I'm not, this is not some fringe right-wing concept. This is pretty basic stuff here, right? Foreign direct investment is vital to the economic health of all states. Listen to this, they say on their propaganda website, according to Select USA, approximately 47,000 jobs in Arkansas are directly supported by majority foreign-owned businesses. Okay, all right. That's perfectly okay. But to say that this is something that's vital, I mean, personally, I would want to shoot for American companies first, all right? I mean, why wouldn't you want to do that? And you know what? It's one thing to say, okay, foreign companies are fine, whatever. Which foreign companies? I mean, is it Russia, Saudi Arabia, China? I mean, what is it? Some apparently are more acceptable than others. And it'd be one thing if we had one deal with China that was trying to materialize and create jobs at some point in the next 100 years. It'd be one thing if it was one, but it's like 4. It's 4, and he spent all this time over in China touring the Shandong province. And my question is why? And the real question is, you got to understand, I mean, nobody thought Donald Trump was going to, nobody foresaw Donald Trump. Nobody knew what he was going to do with the tariffs. Nobody knew what he was going to how he was going to handle China. And now, I mean, I know they're saying that things are good. They're hoping to break ground next year. I mean, I was texting people yesterday. Is this really happening? I mean, is this? And people are just, well, I can't believe this is still the direction we're going to move. But maybe you can't afford to take a loss. I don't know why. It's not like there's a third term out there. I mean, it just is what it is. Economic development in general, though, I just want to remind you, whether it's coming from another state or another country, is ridiculous in and of itself, because the media does a terrible job. They'll do the initial press conference, they'll do the initial headline with the breaking news. Sometime in the next 4 years, there are going to be 75, 100, 350 jobs. But the first thing that money buys, taxpayer money buys, is positive publicity for the politician that looks like they're the ones creating the jobs. Oftentimes, though, these things don't materialize, and there's really not much follow-up left, or there's really not much follow-up. We got to go to break. Anyway, can you believe this? I can't. Hawksbill Crag used, superimposed on the nation of China. That's your Arkansas Economic Development Commission for you.
Performing academically, with ACTs and SATs, I guess, as far as the high school testing records go. But he said, I didn't know anything about it. And I thought, how can you be the director?
A privilege walk. He didn't know anything about that.
No. And
what about the sexual assault?
Well,
and what
that
you say a man got sexually assaulted. So how does that?
An adolescent.
An adolescent, yeah.
And the parent,
but a boy. So
yes, the parent. Listen, his testimony when he stood up and talked, he was trembling and shaking in front of the whole group that were there to explain what had happened, how he had gone to the administration and let them know. And I always assumed, okay, if something like that happens, these are court-mandated reporters. They should have immediately.
Hey, folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your #1 source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Maybe, actually, I think we should. I think we should play our montage, our mashup of Vice President Mike Pence, back and forth between, it goes Pence and then it goes the governor, Pence and the governor. Maybe we'll have time for that after this next interview. Well, we might have some. Sometime we might be able to listen to some of it. Because it's really good. It does contrast the administration's China policy with what we're doing, which is, it just doesn't make any sense. Some very funny jokes on Twitter. I'm sorry, on Facebook. Hang on a second. After that last segment that we did, Jackie on Facebook writes, ASA, Asian serving Asians. So Joe and I were like, well, okay, we see what we're trying to do there with the acronym. It would be more appropriate to be, what'd you say, agents serving Asia? Agents serving Asia. That would be a better acronym. But I see where you get the serving, because we of course know our great partners with many of our parodies are written by the great folks at Aristocrats Serving Arkansas. They've been writing parodies since 2015. So, just so you know, we're up against a hard break. When we come back, I want to introduce you to an author by the name of Benjamin Powell. Benjamin Powell has written a book called Socialism Sucks. Two economists drink their way through the unfree world, and what they find is pretty interesting. We'll talk to him when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
Police department.
Right.
filed a report and then let the police investigate. Evidently, and there may be more of those cases, but they've not been properly handled by the administration. And so it just spun. I don't think it ever spun out of control, because Tim did a great job of letting people speak. I mean, if he had shut people down, there would, I mean, I can only imagine chairs being thrown or
so people
fists being pounded.
These parents were very upset.
Yes.
With what they're hearing from their kids.
And some of these parents that were speaking were graduates themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And one family had 2 of their children back in the school, and the mother had been a graduate. One of our legislators has 5 children of constituents in the school. And so, Paul, here's what I mean, I found myself pulled in, and my only point to go was just to represent my constituents.
Did you start investigating this?
We have, and I have, and here's something that I sent out earlier this month. But after that meeting was over, I walked out to head to my pickup truck, and I was swarmed by people wanting to tell me their story of problems. And some of the faculty have even come to me and said, we don't even have an HR program here that addresses grievances. And if we do try to mention a grievance, we are berated and made to think you're about to lose your job. And some of them have down there. But I sent this out to 8 colleagues this month. I'll just read it real quickly. Good morning, colleagues. Please forward this message on to any other legislators you may know who are interested in the ASMSA situation. As mentioned, we need to have a closed-door meeting to determine what needs to happen legislatively next. We need to separate fact from fiction and talk about what we are hearing from our constituents who have children at the school. I'm open to possible dates where we can all be in Little Rock. Please let me know your thoughts. After I sent that out, I started getting comments back. Brant, we've known about problems at the school for a long time, and they're talking like a year, 2 or 3. But nobody stood up to take it on as a personal mission to get to the bottom of it, find out what corrections can be made, and move the school forward with the integrity that a school of that nature needs to be. So I've got a running thread, as you can see, just comments.
Yeah.
And I've been surprised at some comments that people knew, but they never stood up to just put their hand up and say enough.
Right.
So,
well, and that's why I mean, I had a
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Show is moving so fast this morning for me. It's very strange. All right, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for starting the beginning of your day with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Folks, I want to introduce you to a guy by the name of Benjamin Powell. Benjamin is an author. The book is titled Socialism Sucks. 2 economists drink their way through the unfree world. It's co-authored by, again, Mr. Powell here and his friend Robert Lawson. Benjamin, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you, Paul. Happy to be with you.
Absolutely. So tell us, what inspired you to write this book, sir?
Well, my buddy Bob called me and wanted to get drunk in Cuba, and I needed a decent excuse for a work project. My wife doesn't like me taking vacations with him.
That's
kind of the funny answer, but the real answer is the rise and popularity of socialism in the United States, again, particularly with young people, and a lot of confusion about what socialism actually is and is not. What's the relationship between democracy and socialism, or lack of relationship? In what countries in the world really are socialist and aren't, and what's the historic track record of performance of the ones who are?
So, yeah, the left says, when we say on the right, okay, name me one successful socialist country, they're like, Norway. It's like, well, no, you can keep your money there. So do you guys make that distinction in the book?
First chapter in the book, the introduction, is called Not Socialism, Sweden. And it applies equally to Norway and Denmark or whatever other Nordic country you want to point out on this. Listen, the Nordic countries have big welfare states. They tax a lot, and they do a lot of transfers, and they regulate labor markets a bit too. But other than that, they're very pro-market. They have minimal business regulation. They have great security of private property rights. They enforce private contracts. They have sound money. They lightly regulate banks. They have free trade. These places are capitalist countries. Socialism means government ownership or control over the factors of production instead of private property with entrepreneurs making business decisions based on profit and losses. These places are highly capitalist. My co-author, Bob, he also co-authors the Economic Freedom of the World annual report that tries to rank basically how capitalist versus socialist countries are. Denmark, Sweden, Norway, these are all in the top fifth of the index of most free market economies. I think Denmark's even 16th or something like that, barely behind the United States. Now, I think big welfare states have consequences that are bad. Sweden, since adopting a big welfare state, slowed its growth. It didn't become a socialist hellhole, but it did stop growing and is no longer among the very richest nations in the world. Instead, it's in the bottom half of the OECD countries. So there's trade-offs there, but let's not confuse it with socialism.
I completely agree. Yeah, the so-called Swedish model it might be attractive, big welfare state, but it is not socialism. Textbook. So what about like Venezuela? That would be what we're seeing. That's textbook socialism, isn't it?
It is now. So this was, you said when you ask democratic socialists what country do they want to be like, and they say a Nordic country. If you go back 10 years ago, this was the poster child for democratic socialism. Venezuela, that is. Venezuela was relatively wealthy. Cesar Chavez came to power in what was widely viewed as a free and fair election in 1998. He was reelected, had a new constitution democratically put in. They said this is functioning democratic socialism. Two big problems here, of course. The supposed success it was having, Venezuela sits on the world's largest oil reserves. And during the period of high oil prices running up to 2013, it was the foreign exchange that they earned from selling oil abroad that they used to subsidize everything all over their economy. But meanwhile, underneath what was happening was they were socializing the means of production, whether not just government ownership, but government de facto control with edicts of what people could do with their private property. And the system was collapsing. Food imports were increasing dramatically in Venezuela because the food production system was collapsing. As soon as oil prices went down, and in fact, by the way, oil production has gone down because the socialist nationalized oil company isn't good at maintaining its facilities, they lost the ability to get so much foreign exchange, and now the country is starving. It's also an example of how you cannot maintain democratic freedoms with a socialist economic system. A socialist economic system entails planning and coordination by the government. It entails centralizing power. Once you do that, you cannot have people oppose your plans. And when they try to do so politically, invariably the people with the political power crack down on them. So the Venezuelan elections this last time around for Maduro were a complete sham. Government employees at government nationalized companies were told that they must go vote for the current regime. People were handed out food aid by the government next to the polling places. When Maduro overwhelmingly gets reelected, and the average Venezuelan lost 24 pounds last year, you know the election is a fraud. They didn't all of a sudden find Jenny Craig. They're starving under his system.
Gosh, yeah, it's absolutely terrible. And I agree with the president in the State of the Union when he said, we will never be a socialist country. It's trying to protect the people from what, Venezuela and what other people have gone through. I mean, talk about Cuba. I mean, this is an example. By the way, folks, we're talking with Benjamin Powell. He's a co-author of a book, Socialism Sucks. Two economists drink their way through the unfree world. I want to get to the drinking part here in a minute, Benjamin. But tell us a little bit about Cuba.
Sure, and before I do, I just want to say final word on Venezuela, too. This is a point related to what you're saying about not happening here. I mean, Venezuela in 1970 was a highly capitalist country. It was among the top 10 freest economically in the world. and they were very wealthy. They were wealthier than Spain itself. So the poverty that we observed in Venezuela, people crossing the border to Colombia trying to buy basic necessities, these were people who were previously middle class, upper middle class. It wasn't the type of normal third world poverty that you see traveling to poorer countries. So it really is a warning to other wealthy places of what you can do to yourself with these policies.
Yeah, destroy your civilization. So Cuba then.
So Cuba is, of course, a much longer experiment with socialism than Venezuela. In the book, we call Cuba subsistence socialism because it's just kind of chugging along. And, in fact, if you want to observe a socialist economic system, Cuba is the best place in the world to do it today. It's safe. You can travel throughout the country. And the kind of key as you're looking through and traveling Cuba is what's messed up because they're poor and what's messed up because it's planned. And some of it isn't obvious right away. But you're walking through downtown central Havana and trying to figure out, because we like to drink our way from one bar to the next and kind of stumble around and figure things out. And it's hard to figure out which street to walk down because there's no signs. Why are there no signs? Well, it's because no one gives a damn. If you're state-owned businesses, you don't really care whether you sell product or not. Not the matter of being poor. You can go to some of the poorest countries of the world, and beer companies give away their signs for free to let you know you can find it there. The prices in Cuba are crazy off, wrong. Economics, price theory works, but it doesn't reflect the real scarcities around the globe because of their planned economy. They have a tremendous shortage, as this will resonate with listeners probably. Everybody knows the quintessential American automobiles in Cuba. The old 1950s automobiles. Do you have any idea? These things are held together with popsicle sticks and bubble gum. Wow. Any idea what one of them goes for? Keeping in mind that the average Cuban earns less than $3,000 a year.
I have no clue.
Over $15,000. And a modern car like a Peugeot by modern in quotations here, Peugeot from the 1990s, these might go for $30,000. They just have a huge scarcity of cars because the government doesn't allow importation of them, or very limited importation of them. They'll like to blame it on the U.S. so-called blockade, they call it, but the embargo just prohibits the U.S. companies from sending cars there. It doesn't prevent Kias or anything else from going there. The Cuban government that does it. So the prices are all wrong. They have limited free enterprise there. So no system is absolute pure capitalism or pure socialism. The limited private enterprise, they allow individuals to rent out rooms in their houses, and they allow limited private restaurants. And there you can see the power of incentives. They're well kept, the people are timely, they try hard, in contrast to state hotels and state restaurants, which are god-awful. But at the same time, they're operating in a socialist economic system, so the private restaurants, what they do is okay, but it's rather bland, and all of them have basically the same dozen to 15 items on the menu everywhere, and it's because they deal with the state supply chain to get their ingredients. Cuban food in Cuba sucks. Cuban food in Miami is great.
Yeah.
And it's not the difference of the Cubans, it's the difference of the economic system.
Wow, that is so interesting. So, folks, we're talking with Benjamin Powell, again, author of the book Socialism Sucks. Two economists drink their way through the unfree world. So the subtitle there, Benjamin, what were you guys trying to convey? You guys are going through the unfree world, and you're having libations, and you came to a conclusion about what the quality of beverage you can get in socialist countries.
Yeah, so running through the book is kind of a metaphor. So the book is, free market economics, Milton Friedman style meets Anthony Bourdain style of travel and drinking.
I love it. I love it.
But the underlying metaphor of what's going on there is looking at the alcohol between countries reflects the differences in their economic system. So in Sweden, you can get wonderful beer, Belgian beer, and it's high quality, but they tax the bejesus out of it. So you pay a lot for it because of their high taxes and their welfare state. Venezuela, now that's the polar opposite. Polar is, by the way, the name of their national beer company, privately owned, but government controls over it. And they ran out of beer. Venezuela ran out of beer. More specifically, they didn't allocate enough foreign exchange in their centralized system in order to import barley to make the beer. As a result, they ran out of beer. Cuba, you can get beer. There's two types, Cristal and Bucanero. They're both about 4.5% to 5% alcohol, and they both taste like a kind of crappy Budweiser. The North Korean, it's god-awful swill. It's hard to even get one of those down. But then go to highly capitalist countries, and you have a great variety. And in fact, Bob and I, we went to Socialism 2018 conference, the biggest socialist gathering in the United States in Chicago. And they were serving a Revolution IPA on tap there, which is a privately owned beer company in Illinois that loves putting socialist imagery on their products. But ironically, that one privately owned company produces a greater variety and quality of beer than all of the socialist countries in the world combined.
Mm-hmm. Because it's because it's privately owned and you have incentive and you want to make a product people want to buy, so you make money. That's pretty much that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, and that's why the title caught my eye, because Joe was saying, my producer Joe, he was like, "Oh, what's this about? Is this about the poor, socialists, the victims of socialism, that they've got to have better alcohol because they need it so much because their country's just a terrible place to be, so there's nothing else to do but drink." And I said, "No, Joe, I think it's the opposite. I think they're so bad that there's no variety, and because there's no incentive to make a good alcoholic beverage."
Yeah, and I'll give you an example from just within one country. So the Soviet Republic of Georgia that we went to, which is a dramatic success story now, highly capitalist, one of the 10 freest economies in the world today, did major reforms following the Rose Revolution a little over a dozen years ago. But Georgia, was in the Southern Soviet Union, just north kind of Iran and Armenia, Azerbaijan, off the Black Sea. And the Soviets were commies, not idiots. They knew to make wine in Georgia rather than, say, Siberia. But what they did was they planted mass production wine on fertile, low-lying, easy-to-farm land and produced a bunch of swill. All of that has been ripped up since Georgia has become capitalist. And what Georgia does now is it produces traditional Georgian wine that's fantastic, that's much higher quality production and what the market actually likes. And they do that in the hillier country in traditional winemaking areas.
Wow. Hey, I do have one question, kind of unrelated to the book, but you mentioned North Korea. Are you encouraged with the status, the diplomatic relations between the United States and North Korea at this point?
I don't know if I'm particularly optimistic on real recent developments, but I'll say this, that isolating and ignoring has not been a way to undermine socialism. I think the dumbest policy the United States has towards Cuba is the embargo and trade restrictions. When free market countries trade with less free countries, ideas cross-pollinate, and ultimately the ideas of freedom are more powerful than the ideas of central planning and control. I think we'd do more to undermine the Cuban system, Cuban socialist system, by having more Americans go there and by having free trade with them. I think the same is true for North Korea, although I think the opportunities for trade are probably more limited, and it doesn't seem like recent diplomacy is really pushing us very far in that direction. But I think isolationism against them is not going to be a winning strategy.
Well, Benjamin Powell, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate this book and the conclusions that you draw. I would have never thought to draw the conclusions. I guess what I'm trying to say is, the whole alcohol thing is fascinating to me. I would have never guessed that, but that is such an interesting hook. And I think, hopefully it'll get some of these young people to realize, speak their language, if you will, and to realize, hey, socialism's not a good thing, right?
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.
All right, appreciate it. Benjamin Powell, everybody. Author of Socialism Sucks. Two economists drink their way through the unfree world. It is sad that these young people are buying into socialism. Oh, by the way, real quick recap. All you're going to hear today is about AOC and the border. What you need to go listen to is Ted Cruz and what he said at the border yesterday about human sex trafficking. It's a vast contrast, but the media is going to harp on this new Facebook page and everything else. But you'll hear about it. Trust me. Just wait. We're going to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
I had a listener of the show contact me and told me some of this, and they specifically mentioned your name too, and said, "Hey, you need to talk to Brant." And so I think this is an attempt to maybe get some publicity out there about some of the stuff going on.
Well, and that's the reason I'm here, is I want this to be broad enough that if there are concerns or someone has had an issue that was never dealt with, this is their time to do that, and they can send me an email at Brant, BRANDT .smith@arkansashouse.org, and if necessary, I'll call you back. Otherwise, I'll just take your information and present it before Joint Performance Review. That committee is chaired by Representative Jimmy Gazaway, and we're looking at dates, the calendar now, and a proper date to call us all together and to get those.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Real quick, for my personal records here, or for my personal reference, I'm going to type in Conduit News on YouTube, and I am going to type in Pence, as in Vice President Mike Pence, and let's see here. Does it come up? I think it does somewhere. There we go. So I wanted to give you the actual video title. We're not going to have time to play today, maybe later in the week, but the actual video title is Asa undermines Trump Pence on communist China. That's the video title. You go and watch it, and considering China's been in the news recently, and consider the Arkansas Economic Development Commission takes a photo of Hawksbill Crag and superimposes it into the state of China on an Arkansas taxpayer-funded website, or at least partially funded. The Arkansas Economic Development Commission is partially taxpayer, and they give away taxpayer dollars. It's pretty incredible. So you can check out that video and see it. I mean, it's been up for a while. October 15th, 2018 is when it was made. So it's aging well. I feel like it's aging very well. Our meme of the day is. Go ahead, Joe. Let's see here. Which one did we pick? I can't remember which one. We had... Oh, yeah. This is great. I love this one. We'll post this up at the Conduit News Twitter, at Conduit News, as well as the Facebook page. This is courtesy of Conservative Memes on Instagram, and it is a photo of a, what is this, is this a shot, not shot put, it's, what is it called where you, shot puts the cannonballs or whatever. What's the other one called? What, we should have known this. What's the track and field event where you're grabbing onto like a kettlebell or whatever, kettle weight, and you're spinning around and you hurl it? Anyway, it's that. You guys know what I'm talking about. And it's is it weight throw? I don't know. It's companies on the on July the 1st, and it's got them. It's I guess the weight is a rainbow flag, and it's showing the guy chunking the rainbow flag away. Because for the entire month of June, all we have seen is LGBTRSTLNE. Would you like to buy a Val community imagery on everything? Because it was Gay Pride Month. You're not supposed to say Gay Pride. You're supposed to say Pride. Because the gays were there first, and they have now recognized that they have gay privilege. They've had it too good for too long, and so you got to drop Gay Pride, and you just got to go with Pride. And it's amazing how many young people were celebrating this momentous occasion all month. June, my birth month, is also the month of Rainbow Pride. Jackie on Facebook, it's absolutely amazing that millennials and snowflakes are oblivious to what's going on in Venezuela. Our mainstream media at work and public indoctrination centers are to blame. Oh, absolutely they are. Matter of fact, tomorrow on the program, I'm going to play for you a video that I found this past weekend that details it's a former KGB agent that came to America back in the 80s, or did an interview back in the 80s. And he details the government's efforts and how they control the masses through indoctrination, subversion, and everything else, and keeping people asleep. And basically, there's this one part where this former KGB agent is essentially saying that the result of this programming that the government institutes on a populace means that it doesn't matter if you give someone factual information, meaning you could give them facts, you could show them video of something happening. Their programming would be so strong that they would still resist the truth when it was right there in front of them. And that's, of course, why. That's when I knew I was going to play this video for you guys on the show. We're going to get to it tomorrow. That's when I knew I was going to do it, because I was like, that sounds so much like, you have, for example, there was another meme that we didn't get to, but there was one meme where, you're on the interstate and, you can go straight and you've got a sign, or you can take the exit, and it's the car swerving over violently, taking the exit that's marked you don't have a uterus, because it's a feminist driver who's in a debate with a man that's making reasoned arguments, and once the reasoned arguments take hold, that you cut across the lanes, get to the exit, and that's what it is. Oh, it's also July 2nd, by the way. July 2nd is in fact Independence Day. This is the day we celebrate our Independence Day, because it's the day that the Continental Congress actually voted for independence. And then they later came back and signed it. All of them, I don't think they didn't all sign it until sometime in August. So we covered that in the first hour. Again, you're going to hear all day today about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her trip to the border, where she makes this claim that migrants were forced to drink toilet water. That's not true. But you're also going to hear about a new Facebook page that they have found that has Border Patrol agents who are members of it, and there's lewd photos and there's lewd talk of stuff that, about the situation on the border. You're going to hear about this. It's going to be wall-to-wall coverage. You should ignore it and instead go listen to what Ted Cruz said at the border yesterday, when he actually talked about the human sex trafficking that's going on, and how you have men stealing children because they know if they have a child, they have a loophole to get in this country. That's what you need to be watching today instead of this AOC nonsense, who went down there after calling them concentration camps. So, of course, she's got to find something outrageous because she refuses to walk back her ridiculous statement comparing what's going on at the border with the murder of 6 million Jews. Arkansas, we'll see you tomorrow. Be safe.